You might think you know who you are, but what if everything you believe about yourself is just a clever mask crafted by ego? When ego takes root in your identity, it doesn't just distort how you see yourself. It quietly reshapes how you interact with the world, potentially robbing you of authenticity, wisdom, and connection. So, how do you break free from the grip of ego and find the truth of who you really are? Beyond the roles and labels, the concept of identity is often woven with the threads of ego, so much so that we might not even recognize its influence until it subtly takes hold. Whether you're already walking the path of a spiritual teacher, or you're simply on the verge of stepping into that role, there's one undeniable truth. The world is crying out for awakening. It's calling for those who can lead, inspire, and remind others of their true essence. But here's the catch. The moment you start attaching your sense of self to that role, ego sneaks in through the back door. Right now, I'm embodying the role of a spiritual teacher. But is that who I truly am? Yes, in this moment, the function of spiritual teacher is unfolding. But the moment I step off this stage, if I carry with me a mental image of myself as a great spiritual teacher, I risk walking around with an inflated ego. I might see others as lesser and unknowingly allow my ego to taint my teachings, clouding the wisdom I meant to share. The ego blocks the flow of intuitive knowledge, the very essence that emerges when we step aside and allow something greater to guide us, something beyond our limited concept of self. Spiritual teacher is simply a role, a function that appears in the present moment. When I leave here, it's crucial that I let go of any mental narrative that defines who I am. This applies not only to spiritual teachers, but to everyone. Where do you derive your sense of self? What do you identify with? On a surface level, it's easy to define ourselves through our roles, our jobs, our achievements, our possessions. However, when asked, "What do you do?" it's often easier to give a simple answer, like "I'm a writer" or "I'm a therapist." But what happens when we strip all these labels away? What's left? Identity is one of the most important aspects of life, right after our basic needs for food and shelter. From a young age, we feel the pull to define ourselves. It begins innocently enough with a child identifying with their name. "I'm John," or "I'm Mary." This is the beginning of ego formation. Can't be avoided. The child finds something external to associate with themselves, like a toy, and says "mine." The toy becomes part of their identity. When the toy is taken away, the pain doesn't come from the toy itself. It comes from the threat to the child's sense of self. This is just the beginning of how the ego grows. As we age, the ego expands, attaching itself not just to objects, but to concepts, achievements, and even physical appearance. The body, for instance, plays a huge role in ego identification. Some people pride themselves on their physicality, while others struggle with how they appear. It's not just about being stronger or more attractive. Even feeling less than someone else can feed the ego. The ego thrives on comparison, on feeling superior or inferior. This is why it's vital to recognize the ego within yourself. It can be a major obstacle on the path to awakening, creeping in when you least expect it and hijacking your sense of self. When you begin to realize how deeply the ego is ingrained in your identity, you can start letting go of the attachments that keep you bound to it. This process of shedding the ego's grip is essential for spiritual growth. The more we identify with roles, possessions, and outward appearances, the more we lose sight of the truth of who we really are. But when we let go of these illusions, something beautiful happens. We become free. Free to step into our true essence, unburdened by the constraints of ego. And in that freedom, we can truly begin to live and teach from a place of authenticity, of wisdom, and of love. So, whatever you choose to do, let's go with spiritual teacher. I know that some of you are already sharing your wisdom as spiritual teachers in your own unique ways. Maybe you're a therapist, or perhaps you're involved in helping others in some way. Many of you are on a path to becoming spiritual teachers, whether that's in a direct or indirect manner, formally or informally. Absolutely. You're meant to be here because the world truly needs awakening, and those who are awakening and those who are awakened. So, there's a bit of a challenge, no matter where you find yourself. But for now, let's focus on the journey of becoming a spiritual teacher and what that means in your own unique way. Anything that creates a sense of self suggests that the ego is sneaking back in quietly. Is it true that right now I am a spiritual teacher? Absolutely, but just in the way that it's a function. In this moment, I can share that I see myself as a spiritual teacher. However, when I step off this stage and out the door, if I hold onto a mental image of myself as a wonderful spiritual teacher, I would walk with that in mind. And of course, I might think that everyone else is not as good as me, and without realizing it, I could be strolling around with a big ego. Eventually, the ego might interfere with my ability to teach. It might mix up the teaching with ego and untruths, or it could entirely hinder the natural intuitive teaching that occurs when you, meaning the ego, step aside. When you step aside, something beyond the usual you comes forth, the unconditioned consciousness, and it can utilize your mind. That's how you can truly use your intelligence in a way that helps steer clear of madness. Being a spiritual teacher is a role. When I leave this place, I need to let go of a mental image, a story in my mind that defines who I am. That is a conceptual sense of self. Absolutely, this principle is relevant, not just for spiritual teachers, but for everyone in any circumstance. Where do you find your sense of self? What helps you feel like yourself? I understand that, on a surface level, being a spiritual teacher is effective. It helps to fix issues. When you ask someone, "What do you do?" you might say this or that. I typically don't refer to myself as a spiritual teacher. If I travel to another country, I sometimes get asked at the border or airport, "What do you do? What brings you here?" Typically, I mention, "I'm a writer." I'm a writer. Great. That takes care of the issue. I don't really think about it in terms of having no conceptual identity. It seems like they might not allow you in. We prefer to connect with individuals who have a clear sense of their identity. So, the question is, how can you release the way you define your identity, which is really significant in everyone's life? Your sense of identity is likely one of the most important aspects of your life, right after food and shelter. It begins right from a young age. Before long, they seek a growing sense of I. Every person has a natural urge to seek a fulfilling sense of self and identity. It begins with a little child who says, well, maybe it starts, but as soon as the parent tells the child, "You are Mary, you are John," child excitedly responds, "John. John, yes, John. Hey, John. Oh, John. What's your name?" After a little bit, the child says, "John." That's just the start. And there's no way around it. You can't say to a child, "No, you're not John. You're nobody." It needs to grow. So John or Mary has a toy, and then another child wants to play with it. It's my own, my toy. It's mine. It's all about the idea. Just a thought in the mind. You connect something outside of yourself with your identity. The toy transforms into a mental concept. The idea pops up. This is my toy. This thought of my toy reflects a part of myself. When the toy is taken away, the pain doesn't come from losing the toy itself, because likely, just a few minutes later, the child loses interest in the toy anyway. The discomfort comes from something tugging at your sense of identity, and that can be quite tough to handle. And that's just the start of it. Then it grows and escalates. The conceptual self that connects with things, that identifies with things, it includes more than just items. These are all ideas we have in our minds. A thought form emerges from the thing. It's all mine. That's how you shape your sense of self. It's common to find ourselves comparing with others, since our ego often looks for ways to feel a bit better about itself. Your sense of identity comes from feeling a bit ahead in some part of your life. The ego seeks a sense of superiority to feel valued and important. I'm bringing this up because it's really important to notice it within yourself, as it can be a big hurdle to awakening. It can surprise you, and it can show up in the most unexpected places. This is why I bring up spiritual teachers. You resonate with it. The body plays a significant role in how we identify ourselves, beyond just our possessions. Physical body can bring about suffering for some individuals, while for others, it can be a source of pride. There are also many people who fall somewhere in the middle. There are moments when they feel great about their body, and other times when they don't quite feel that way. Magazines and other sources often focus on your body, your body, your body, your body. It's natural to connect with our physical appearance, and when we perceive it as stronger or more attractive than others, it can really boost our self-esteem. Even if it doesn't look as appealing or perfectly shaped as others, it can still be a boost for the ego if it brings you pain. It's not just the amazing things that are tied to ego. Even feeling like you have less than someone else can be a part of it too. As you continue along your journey, it's important to recognize that the process of shedding the ego's grip is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice. The more we let go of the attachments that define us, the more we come face to face with the freedom that lies in simply being. This freedom is where true wisdom and love reside, beyond the masks and labels we wear. When we release the need for identity, for the constant proving of our worth, we can stand in the truth of who we are, without needing to justify or defend it. We are not defined by what we do, by how others see us, or by the roles we play. We simply are. Ultimately, spiritual growth isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you've always been beneath all the layers of ego. The more you step aside and allow the unconditioned consciousness to guide you, the more naturally you'll find yourself living and teaching from a place of authenticity. This is the essence of spiritual awakening. When the ego no longer drives you, the divine can move through you in ways that are both powerful and pure. So, as you walk this path, whether as a spiritual teacher or in any other role, remember that who you truly are cannot be defined. You are much more than the sum of your labels and accomplishments. You are the unspoken wisdom and love that arises when the ego steps aside. It's wonderful that your desire to grow and enjoy the present moment led you to watch this video. This decision was made because of a better understanding. You should definitely consider subscribing to this channel. It's a wonderful opportunity to continue your journey of self-discovery with our new videos that we upload every day. Once you grasp how crucial this warning is, kindly reply with "now." With a bit of teamwork, we can absolutely make this happen.